He put out the ad because the silence was too loud. She answered it because she had no other choice. But when a guarded rancher opened his door to a widow and her 2 sons, none of them realized they were stepping into something that might just save them all. The knock came just as the coffee went cold. Samuel Vance didn't get many visitors, and he liked it that way. But when the echo of knuckles on would cut through the quiet of the ranch house, he stood anyway. Slow, steady, the way a man moves when he's not sure if the past or the future is waiting on the other side. He opened the door. The woman didn't flinch, though her sons clung to either side of her like shadows. One was tall and thin, the other barely to her waist, but both had their hands fisted tight in the folds of her skirts. Her coat was dusted with the road, her eyes rimmed with travel and something older, something worn thin by time and disappointment. "I'm Cora Hale," she said, voice firm despite the wear in it. "You posted for a housekeeper." Samuel looked past her, half expecting a wagon, a man, something else. But it was just her and the boys, and the wind curling off the ridge. "I did," he said after a long beat. "We came from Bridgewater. Took us 4 days by mule," she added, as if that explained the silence in her voice, the sag in her shoulders. The older boy stood taller, gaze guarded like a man twice his age. "I'm Eli," he said, before nodding toward the younger one. "This is Jonah." Jonah just stared, thumb tucked against his lip. Samuel nodded once. "Comein." He stepped aside, and that was all. No welcome, no handshakes. Just the scrape of boots across wood and the hush of strangers stepping into someone else's quiet. Inside, the house was plain, not barren, but clearly lived in by a man who didn't need much. A stove, a few worn chairs, a table with one plate still sitting beside the cold coffee. Cora took it in quickly, the way women did, scanning for what was missing before they even unpacked. "You got space for us?" she asked. Samuel pointed toward the back hall. 2 rooms. Wasn't expecting kids. Weren't expecting much of anything, I gather, she replied without heat. "Just fact." She looked around again. "We can make it work." Jonah wandered toward the hearth, where ash still lingered from the morning's fire. Eli stayed close, eyes flicking to Samuel like he was measuring something more dangerous than a rancher. Cora dropped her bag by the table. "We'll work for our keep. You'll find I don't take charity, Mr. Vance." "I wasn't offering any." "Good." She set her jaw. "Then we understand each other." And that was how it started. No smiles, no small talk. Just a woman and 2 boys standing in a stranger's house because there was nowhere else to go. Samuel didn't ask what happened to her husband. Cora didn't ask why he lived out here alone with only cattle and cold walls for company. That kind of pain didn't need words, not right away. Later that evening, Samuel was hauling water from the pump when he heard soft footsteps on the porch. Eli stood there, arms crossed, watching. "You got a lot of land," the boy said. "You do. You run it alone?" Samuel poured the water into the trough. "Most days. That why you needed a housekeeper?" Samuel looked at the boy then. He wasn't challenging, exactly, but he wasn't just curious either. He was looking for the shape of something, weakness maybe, or proof. "I posted for a housekeeper," Samuel said carefully, "because the house was falling apart faster than I could fix it. Not because I needed company, not because I wanted charity, because it was time." Eli nodded, but didn't look convinced. "You don't smile much." Samuel wiped his hands on a rag. "You do?" That pulled a twitch of something close to a smirk from the boy, but he turned and disappeared inside without another word. That night, the wind rose. Cora stirred the stew she'd made with quiet concentration, eyes flicking to Jonah, who'd finally curled up near the hearth with a borrowed blanket. Eli sat at the table, silent, chewing slowly. Samuel watched them from his chair near the window, the rifle always close. He wasn't sure what unsettled him more. The noise of children in his house again after so long, or how easily it started to feel like it belonged. "Jonah's 5, Cora said finally, breaking the hush. "Elias 12. Their father died 3 months back. Fever took him in less than a week." Samuel didn't move. "We had nothing," she went on. "No land, no kin worth asking. So when I saw your posting on the mercantile board, I thought, Maybe this was the road left to take. Samuel's voice was low. I am sorry. Don't be. She looked up at him, steady. Just don't make me regret coming. And with that, she stood and began cleaning dishes like the room wasn't still full of ghosts. Later, long after the children were asleep and the fire burned low, Samuel found himself sitting alone at the table. The chair across from him, the one Cora had used, still held the faint shape of her weight. He reached for the coffee, realized it was cold, and drank it anyway. He wasn't sure yet what he'd let into his home. But he knew this. Whatever storm had brought them here, it wasn't finished yet. And neither was he. The morning came cold and quick, the sky the pale color of unfinished paper. Samuel Vance rose before the sun, same as always, boots hitting the floorboards like punctuation. For years, the rhythm had been his own, quiet, deliberate, dependable. But now, as he stepped into the hallway, he heard something else. A pot clinking, a whisper, bare feet padding over worn planks. Cora Hale was already up, sleeves rolled, hair pulled back, stirring a pan of cornbread batter as though she'd always belonged there. She didn't glance up when Samuel entered, just kept working with the kind of calm a woman wears when she's outrun worse than hunger. Hope you don't mind, she said softly, but your pantry was weeping for help. I don't mind, he replied, and it was the truth. Eli sat at the table, already whittling at a piece of wood with a small folding knife Samuel didn't remember seeing before. Jonah leaned over the edge of the table, watching every stroke with wide eyes. Let him try, Jonah asked, tugging at his brother's sleeve. Eli didn't look up. Not yet. It's sharp. Samuel watched that, the older boy's protectiveness layered beneath a shell too grown for 12. He knew that type of boy. He'd been him once. Breakfast was quiet, save for Jonah's humming and the occasional clink of a spoon. The cornbread was good. Better than good. And the silence between bites wasn't awkward. It was the kind that comes when strangers are still deciding if they'll become something else. After the meal, Samuel pushed back from the table and stood. Fence on the east ridge needs mending. Eli, you want to ride out with me? Cora looked up, surprised. So did Eli. The boy nodded after a beat, face carefully unreadable. I can help. Jonah whined softly, tugging at his mother's arm. Can I go too? Not today, she said gently. You, and I have laundry to sort. Jonah scowled. Illy smirket. Samuel turned without another word and headed for the barn. They rode side by side in the thin light, the horses kicking up frostbitten dust. Samuel said little, watching Eli out the corner of his eye as the boy adjusted to the saddle. He rode like someone who hadn't been given many chances but learned fast when he did. You ever mend fence before? Samuel asked. No, sir, but I can learn. You can stop calling me sir. All right. The fence was splintered from the last windstorm, posts leaning like drunk men in the mud. Samuel showed Eli how to brace a rail, how to pull wire taut without slicing his palm open. Eli listened, hand steady, mouth shut. The work went faster than expected. They paused only once at the edge of the ridge. From there, the valley unfolded, golden gray and hollow with winter's approach. Samuel watched Eli glance over the land like he was trying to figure out where it ended. You ever think about leaving? The boy asked. Samuel didn't answer at first. Then, I did once. What stopped you? He looked out at the expanse. Didn't find anywhere worth going. Eli nodded like that made more sense than it should have. We were always going. Mama said every place was just another stop on the way to the next bad thing. Except maybe this one. Samuel looked down at him. That what she thinks? I don't know, Eli admitted. But she doesn't jump at shadows here. They rode back slow, neither one talking much, but the silence between them had shifted. It wasn't wary anymore. It was something more like trust's first route. Back at the house, Cora was hanging clothes on a line strung between two fence posts. Jonah chased a stick like it was a wild dog, shouting about monsters and heroes. When he saw the riders, he dropped the stick and ran full speed toward them. Mama said you'd come back muddy, he called up to Eli. You're not even that dirty. I'll fix that next time, Eli called back with a grin, and for a second, he looked like a boy who still had time to be one. Samuel dismounted, brushing dust from his coat. Cora watched him carefully. You work hard, she asked. He works smart, Samuel said. She smiled just faintly. He gets that from his father. There was a pause. It wasn't long, but it pressed something deep between them. She didn't say more, and Samuel didn't ask. That night, as the fire crackled low, Cora brought out a small tin box wrapped in cloth. She set it on the table and opened it carefully. Inside were folded papers, a broken pair of spectacles, and a single photograph, faded and creased. "My husband," she said simply, sliding it forward. Samuel took it, holding it gently. The man in the photo wore a tired grin and had one hand resting on a younger Eli's shoulder. "He was a dreamer," Cora said. "Too big for most of the rooms we found ourselves in. He wanted to make something of nothing. Died still trying." Samuel slid the photo back. "You're doing just fine without him." She blinked, and for a second something shimmered behind her eyes. Not quite tears, not quite relief. "Thank you," she said quietly. The door knocked. It was late, too late for company. Cora froze, hand still on the tin. Eli sat up from the floor. Jonas stirred in his sleep. Samuel moved to the door without speaking. He opened it slow. A man stood there, draped in a duster dark with road and rain. His face was long, eyes pale and too still. He held his hat in his hands like a funeral guest. "You Samuel Vance?" he asked. "I am. Name's Carver. I ride dispatch out of Gray Hollow." Samuel's brow furrowed. "Something wrong." Carver nodded toward the post road. "Found a man about 6 miles back. Horse shot out from under him. Said your name." Samuel stepped out, voice dropping. "Who?" Carver hesitated. Didn't give it. Just said, "Tell Vance she's coming. And she ain't coming alone." The words hung in the air like ice. Samuel stepped back inside, closing the door behind him. Cora stood at the table, arms tight across her chest. "What is it?" Samuel didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, he said, "You ever heard the name? Mara?" The way her face went white was answer enough. And Samuel knew then it wasn't just her past riding toward them. It was his, too. They didn't sleep much that night. Jonah curled tight between layers of patchwork quilts, twitching softly in dreams he didn't understand. Eli sat by the window until nearly dawn, knife in his lap, eyes trained on the road like he could slice open the dark if it dared come closer. Cora didn't say anything when she found him there. Just laid a blanket over his shoulders and stood with him a while, watching. Inside the house, the silence pressed down heavier than usual. Samuel didn't offer comfort. He wasn't made for it. Instead, he sat at the table alone, turning Carver's words over like thorns in his hand. "She's coming, and not alone." The pieces were loose still, scattered, but they rattled too loud to ignore. He'd known Mara Dinsmore once. Knew her well enough to know that if she was riding west, trouble was stitched into her saddlebags. What he didn't know was why now, or why she'd send warning through a dying man who never gave a name. By the time the sky paled to gold, Samuel was already at the corral, working with the horses as if putting distance between himself and that name would change its weight. He didn't hear Cora approach until she leaned against the fence post, arms folded, jaw tight. "You going to tell me who she is?" He didn't look at her, just adjusted a cinch on the bay mare. "No," he said quietly. "Not yet. Not good enough." Samuel finally turned. "I don't have answers yet, Cora. Only names. And that name, it carries rot." She didn't back down. "If something's coming, I need to know what kind of fight I'm standing in." He looked at her then, really looked. Sunlight caught the edges of her hair, pulled the stubborn line of her spine into sharper relief. She wasn't afraid. She was ready. And that, more than anything, made him ache in a place he'd forgotten he had. "Mara and I," he began slowly, rode together for 2 years. Long time ago. She wasn't law. She wasn't outlaw either. Just carve her own rules and dared the world to stop her. We drifted in the same dust until she took something that wasn't hers and blamed me when the bodies dropped. What did she take? He hesitated. A man's daughter and his money. Cora's mouth flattened. And the man didn't live to see justice. Nor did the girl. There was a long beat before she spoke again. "And you, why'd she blame you?" Samuel leaned against the fence, the old rails groaning beneath his weight. Because I let her. Better one name in the dirt than two. Cora stepped closer. You took the fall. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Inside the house, Jonah laughed. Just a soft sound, the kind that rose like a bird too light to catch. Cora turned toward it, and something shifted in her shoulders. She's not here yet, Samuel said quietly. And when she is, you and the boys will be long gone. No, he blinked. Cora, we've run enough, she cut in. And my boys, they just started sleeping without clutching their boots. I'm not yanking them into the wind again, because a ghost from your past doesn't knock before entering. Samuel stared at her, but her eyes didn't waver. That afternoon, he rode out to the ridge alone. Not to patrol, just to think. He carried his rifle out of habit, but the air was still. No movement beyond the occasional hawk wheeling through the high blue. But something in the land felt restless, as if even the wind remembered Mara's name. Back at the house, Eli helped Cora hang herbs to dry. Jonah sat on the floor with a tin soldier, whispering a story only he could hear. The quiet was strange, deeper than usual. That's when the whisper started. It was faint, soft enough that Cora might have dismissed it if not for the way Jonah's head tilted. He looked up at her, brow furrowed. Mama, someone's talking. Cora paused, knife halfway through a root. What do you mean? Jonah pointed toward the fireplace. They said a name. Said Hale. Like us. Eli froze where he stood. Jonah, stop. That's not funny. I'm not lying. Jonah insisted, eyes wide. Cora knelt down, hands gentle on his shoulders. What else did they say? Jonah hesitated, then whispered. They said the hollow's not empty anymore. Cora rose slowly, heart thudding. She checked the hearth, the windows, every shadow that might have held something more than dust. But there was nothing, only silence. When Samuel returned at sundown, she told him. He listened without blinking, then crossed the room to the gun rack. I'll take the night watch. You think she's already here? I think someone is. The night was darker than usual, moon hidden, stars shy. Samuel sat on the porch with a rifle across his knees, boots planted wide, eyes scanning the tree line. Inside, Cora tucked the boys into the same bed, heart racing. She kept the lantern lit, the door ajar. Sometime past midnight, Eli slipped out of the room. Found Samuel on the porch. I can take a shift, he said softly. Samuel didn't look at him. You can take the next 10 years to be a kid instead. Eli hesitated. What if I don't know how? Samuel finally turned. Then we figure out together. There was a rustle then, sharp, too deliberate to be a rabbit or wind. Samuel raised the rifle before he fully registered the motion. A figure emerged from the dark, slow, tall, hands lifted. Don't shoot, came a man's voice. Ain't armed. Samuel narrowed his eyes. Name? Reckon that depends who's asking. Samuel took a step forward, the rifle still trained. You're on private land. I know. The man lowered his hands. I'm not here for you. Behind Samuel, the door creaked. Cora stood there, lantern held high. When the light hit the man's face, her breath caught. Daniel, she whispered. The man nodded. Didn't know where else to go. Samuel looked from one to the other. Who the hell is Daniel? My brother, Cora said, voice faint. Samuel lowered the rifle, but just barely. Daniel stepped closer, eyes haunted. She's close. Mara, she's looking for you both. What? Samuel asked. Daniel hesitated. Because of what you know, and because of what Cora has. Cora stepped back. I don't have anything. Yes, you do, Daniel said gently. You just don't remember it yet. The wind picked up then, hard and sudden, slamming the door behind them. Inside the house, Jonah sat up in bed, eyes wide. And somewhere beyond the ridge, a low whistle rose, long and slow. Mara was coming, and this time, she wasn't alone. The morning after Daniel arrived, the wind shifted. Not just in temperature or direction. It was the kind of shift animals feel first. The kind that makes birds fall silent and horses uneasy. Samuel noticed at the moment he stepped out to check the troughs. The mare bucked at her tether. The dogs didn't bark. They simply stood by the porch, still as stone, watching the tree line like it might blink. Inside, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in a wool blanket, sipping coffee too slow for a man who claimed urgency. His hands trembled with each lift of the cup. Not from cold, Samuel guessed. From something older. Across from him, Cora was stiff. Pale. She hadn't touched her own drink. "You were supposed to be dead," she said finally, not whispering but not loud either. Daniel's eyes lifted. "I was supposed to be a lot of things, sis. You vanished. 2 winters after Eli was born. You left a note and a boot print." Daniel winced. "I had debts. Bad ones. Folks came looking. I figured if I stayed, you and the boys would end up in a pine box beside me. So you let us bury you without a body." He swallowed hard. "I thought it was safer that way." Samuel watched the exchange, unreadable. Eli stood in the hallway, just out of view, but not far enough to miss any of it. His fists were tight at his sides. Cora exhaled sharply. "Why now?" Daniel set the cup down. "Because she's hunting loose ends. Mara never liked witnesses. And I saw something." Samuel's voice was like gravel. "What?" Daniel leaned forward. "Before I vanished, I ran with her. Briefly. Didn't know what she was then. She'd wear different names in different towns. Sarah, June, Beth. She had a charm to her, but it was thin as paper. Underneath, she was something else entirely. Samuel already knew that. I was with her," Daniel continued, "the day she rode out of Wainscott with a stolen ledger and a girl named Esme. The girl never came back. Neither did the man who went after them." Cora frowned. "So why would she come for me?" Daniel hesitated, then glanced at Jonah, who was playing by the hearth with a piece of string and a set of copper buttons. Samuel caught it. That flick of Daniel's eyes. He stepped forward, slow. "What does she want, Daniel?" Daniel looked at Jonah again, then at Cora. "There's something you're not remembering. You had a journal. I saw you with it. Pages filled with numbers, names, things your husband was working on before he died." "I don't have it anymore," Cora said flatly. "I burned it." "You sure?" Cora didn't blink. "Yes." But her hand drifted toward her apron pocket, almost unconsciously. Samuel noticed. Daniel did too. Later, when the children were outside feeding the hens and Cora was hanging fresh linens to dry, Samuel cornered Daniel in the barn. "You tell me everything. Now." Daniel wiped sweat from his brow, voice tight. "Her operation's gotten bigger. She's not just robbing stagecoaches or charming bankers anymore. She's laundering through land deeds, false mineral claims. Anyone who gets in the way disappears. And the journal had names, deals, things your name and Cora's husband's name were connected to, whether they knew it or not." Samuel felt his jaw clench. "And you?" Daniel hesitated. "I saw her kill a man. Not with a gun. With words. She told the town marshal a man was carrying counterfeit bills. Had him strung up before sundown. All because he caught her rifling through a preacher's desk. She uses people, and when they're empty, she breaks them." "Exactly." Samuel stepped back, voice quiet. "If that journal exists, and she knows Cora once had it, she'll come through fire to get it." That night, the house was restless. Cora found herself at the window long after the others had gone to bed, watching the black beyond the porch for any flicker of movement. Samuel sat nearby, oiling the rifle with methodical care. "Do you believe him?" she asked. "I believe Mara doesn't bluff." Cora closed her eyes. "I didn't mean to keep anything from you." "I know." Silence stretched again, but it wasn't cold. After a moment, Samuel said, "There was a girl. Esme. The one Daniel mentioned. I knew her." Cora looked at him. She was 14. Wanted to see the world. Hitched herself to Mara like a pup chasing a wolf. Thought she'd learn strength that way. She didn't know Mara's kind of strength is carved from bone. Cora's eyes were soft now. "What happened?" "She died crying out for someone to come back." Cora didn't ask who. The storm hit at 2 a.m. Not weather. Horses. 5 of them. Maybe more. Hooves pounding like thunder. The dogs howled and then fell silent. Samuel was out of bed before the second rider hit the yard. He shouted for Eli, who was already awake and halfway to the rifle rack. Daniel was slower, still groggy, but grabbed a pistol from his coat. Cora pulled Jonah into her arms, whispering calm through clenched teeth. The boy was half asleep, trembling but not crying. The riders didn't approach the house. They circled. Once. Twice. Hooves grinding mud. Figures cloaked in black. Torches glowing orange against the mist. Then a single voice rang out. Samuel Vance. Samuel stepped onto the porch, rifle aimed, eyes narrowed. You're harboring something that belongs to me, the voice called again. It was female, smooth and cold. Samuel didn't answer. You've got till sundown tomorrow, she said. Then I stopped asking nicely. They didn't stay. The riders peeled off like shadows and vanished into the tree line. Inside, the fire had gone out. Jonah was shaking. Eli stood behind the door with the rifle held too tight, his knuckles white. Cora met Samuel's eyes. Mara, he nodded once. The sun rose red. They had one day. They rose before the light touched the valley. Jonah wouldn't let go of Cora's hand, not even to dress. He hadn't spoken since the night before, hadn't even asked for his favorite cup at breakfast. Eli moved stiffly, jaw set, acting older than he was. And Daniel hadn't come in from the barn all night. No one had checked if he slept. Samuel didn't ask. He'd seen too many men with guilt growing wild behind their eyes. Outside, frost painted the fence rails white. The sky was flat and dull, like breath held too long. The kind of morning that made every tree look like it was waiting for something to break. Samuel packed the rifles on the table, checking rounds, counting every bullet twice. We'll rotate the watch, he said. I'll take north and west. Daniel, you cover east. Eli, stay inside. Help your mother. That's your job now. Eli bristlet. I can hold a rifle. No one's doubting that, Samuel replied without looking up. But you're not a line soldier. You're a boy in a house with your mother and brother. Protect them. Eli didn't argue again. Cora set bread to bake though no one had appetite. She chopped roots and carrots, made stew in case there was something left to come back to. Her hands shook when she wasn't looking at them. She hummed to herself, a tune Samuel didn't know, but it sounded like a lullaby for a life they weren't sure they'd live to see. Daniel came in just after noon, hat in his hand, face pale. We should talk. Samuel led him to the barn without a word. Once there, he slammed the door behind them, and Daniel didn't flinch. I was wrong, Daniel said quickly. I thought Mara wanted the journal, that she was after proof or money or names. But it's not that. Samuel didn't move. Then what? Daniel hesitated. She's after Jonah. Silence fell like a hammer. Samuel took one slow step forward. Why? Because he's not just Cora's son. Samuel didn't blink. You mean, no, not mine either. Daniel exhaled. You ever hear of a man named Winslow Briggs? Samuel's brow darkened. Outlaw out of Grady's Pass. Got himself rich robbing rail claims. Exactly. Mara rode with him for 6 months. Long enough to get pregnant. Long enough to decide she didn't want to share. Samuel felt it then, crawling under his skin. Are you saying? She was going to sell the child. Cora found out. Took him. Vanished. Jonah's not blood, Sam. Not hers. Not Mara's anymore either. But she wants him back. Samuel stepped away, fists clenched. You're sure? I found the birth notice. Burned into a saddlebag. A name, Jonah Briggs. Cora must have changed it. You tell her. Daniel shook his head. Was going to. But how do you tell a woman the son she's bled from might have been born from blood she tried to forget? Samuel said nothing. Just turned and walked out of the barn. Back at the house, Cora was brushing Jonah's hair with soft fingers. He still hadn't spoken. Eli was by the window, watching every shadow shift with sharp eyes. Samuel paused in the doorway, breath lodged like iron in his throat. We need to talk, he said to Cora. Outside. She joined him by the woodpile. He told her everything. When he finished, she didn't cry, didn't scream, just stood there, arms folded, the wind in her hair. I knew, she said finally. Samuel blinked. What? I knew, she repeated. Not all of it, but enough. He was dropped at my door in the middle of thunderstorm. A woman's scream still echoing in the hills. I held him, and I knew no one would come back for him. I named him Hale because it meant something, not because it was mine. She turned to face him. He's still mine. Samuel nodded. He's a boy, not a prize. And I'll bury anyone who treats him like one. They stood there a moment longer. Then Samuel said, "Sundown's not far." It wasn't. The sky darkened too fast. The fireflies didn't come out. The air hung heavy with the kind of stillness that makes horses pace and children flinch. Samuel posted Daniel near the gate, though he no longer fully trusted him. Cora took up a rifle in the loft, peering through the slats. Eli sat with Jonah, both boys wrapped in quilts near the hearth. Jonah finally spoke. "Is it true?" Eli looked at him. "What?" "That she's coming for me." Eli didn't lie. "Yes." Jonah stared at the fire. "Do I have to go with her?" "No." "How do you know?" Eli picked up the knife he'd been carving with. "Because she doesn't love you. And we do. That's what matters." The first shot rang out just after dusk. Samuel ducked instinctively. Daniel returned fire. A second shot cracked wood beside the porch. No call. No warning. Just gunpowder and smoke. Cora shouted from above. "There, by the fence." Samuel raised his rifle and fired. A scream. Then silence. Then laughter. It floated in from the trees. High, cold, unmistakable. "Samuel," Mara called. "Didn't I give you time?" Samuel stepped into the open. "You want to talk?" "Talk." From the shadows, a shape emerged. Tall, elegant, cloaked in black with a rifle slung across her back and a smile like a snake's last breath. "I don't want to kill you," she said sweetly. "But I will." "Why the boy?" "He's mine." "No, he's not." She shrugged. "Maybe not. But I carried him. That counts." "Carrying's not raising." Mara took a step forward. "Give him to me, Samuel. And I'll let the rest of you live." Inside, Jonah clung to Eli's hand. Cora raised her rifle and trained it on Mara's heart. "No," Samuel said simply. Mara sighed. "Shame." She raised her hand. More figures stepped out of the trees. 5, 6, 7, all armed. Samuel backed toward the door. "Now!" Cora fired. The bullet tore through Mara's shoulder. Chaos exploded. Shots. Screams. The crash of splintering wood. Daniel went down near the gate, hit but not dead. Eli shoved Jonah into the pantry. Cora ran for the stairs. Samuel fired twice, clipped a man's leg, missed the next. Mara was gone. Smoke choked the air. The porch caught fire. Eli slammed the pantry door and locked it. Samuel grabbed Cora. "Get to the cellar." "No, the boys. They're safer where they are." She didn't listen. She ran for them. Samuel followed, blood on his sleeve, breath ragged. Then Jonah screamed, and everything stopped. Jonah's scream sliced through the smoke like a blade. Samuel's heart jerked sideways. He shoved past broken furniture and splintered beams, the fire turning everything gold and dangerous. Cora was already up the stairs, barefoot and wild-eyed, her skirt soaked in blood that wasn't hers, just a long scratch down her thigh, but enough to leave a trail behind her like a wick waiting for flame. "Jonah!" she shouted. No answer. Samuel reached Eli first, collapsed near the pantry door, face pale. Not shot, but bruised badly, a gash over his temple, and the rifle he'd held was gone. They got in, Eli whispered, voice dazed. One of them came through the back window. "I tried. He hit me, Jonah." He took Jonah. Cora dropped to her knees, frantically unlatching the pantry. Empty. Just an overturned quilt and one of Jonah's boots. She screamed. Samuel turned on his heel, barreled for the back door. Daniel was there, slumped against the frame, clutching his side, blood pouring through his fingers. "Don't," he said weakly. "You'll walk into a trap." Samuel grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall hard enough to make the boards groan. "You said you wanted to fix things. You said you came back to help. Where is she taking him?" Daniel didn't even flinch. "There's an old claim shack up in Millridge Hollow. East Slope. She used it before. She'll hole up there till the dust settles. But Sam, she won't hurt him." "She already did," Samuel growled, then let go. He looked to Cora, who was clutching Eli to her chest. "Stay here. Get the fire out. I'll bring him back. I'm going with you." No, Cora's eyes flared. "That's my son." Samuel's voice dropped to gravel. "That's exactly why you're staying. You've already got one hurt. If I don't come back, you take Eli and go west. Don't wait. Don't look back." Cora stood up. She pressed something into his hand. The journal. She hadn't burned it after all. I kept it because I thought it mattered, she said. Now I know it does. Samuel nodded once, tucked the battered leather into his coat, and vanished into the dark. The trail to Millridge Hollow was narrow and steep, carved by miners who'd long since been buried by time or greed. Samuel rode fast, not caring if the mare slipped, not caring if he left tracks. He wanted them to know he was coming. By the time he reached the ridge, the clouds were thick and heavy, pressing the sky low over the world like a lid ready to boil. A flicker of light pulsed from between the trees, a lantern in the claim shack window. He dismounted, quiet now. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled. There were 2 guards. He spotted them before they spotted him. The first dropped with a clean shot through the shoulder. Samuel didn't want dead men, just no witnesses. The second lunged from the trees with a knife, but Samuel moved faster. The butt of the rifle cracked against the man's jaw, sending him sprawling into the brush. Samuel didn't wait. He kicked the door in with one boot and stormed inside. Mara was there, sitting at the table like it was a dinner party. Jonah beside her, tied to a chair, gagged but wide-eyed. Samuel raised the rifle. Step away. Mara smiled. You always did enjoy the dramatic entrance. Untie him. Or what? You'll shoot me? He's close enough to catch the spray. Samuel didn't flinch. Try me. She studied him. Her shoulder was bandaged from Cora's bullet, her blouse stiff with dry blood. But she wasn't broken. If anything, she seemed more alive than before, like violence fed her. You brought it, didn't you? She asked. The journal. Samuel said nothing. Mara stood slowly. I could have killed him, back at the ranch. But I didn't. You know why? Because I wanted this moment. I wanted you to see what you were willing to give for a child that doesn't even belong to you. Samuel's eyes narrowed. You're wrong. He belongs to us because we chose him. You gave that up. I didn't give up anything, she snapped. It was taken. Samuel moved closer. Then take it back. Take the journal. Take whatever revenge you think you're owed. But you don't touch the boy. Mara tilted her head. You really believe in all that righteous nonsense? I believe in not repeating mistakes. Mara's eyes flicked toward the fire behind him. You know how this ends, Sam? Yeah, he said. With you bleeding in the snow and that boy walking out with me. She lunged, faster than he expected. Knife drawn for her boot, a flash of steel and fury. Samuel raised the rifle, but she knocked it aside. They slammed against the table, Jonah screaming behind the gag. The lantern toppled, flames licking across the floorboards. The shack caught fire in seconds. Samuel grabbed Mara by the wrist, twisted until she screamed, the knife falling. He shoved her back hard. So hard she hit the wall and crumpled. The flames leapt higher. Samuel rushed to Jonah, slicing the rope with his own knife. The boy clung to him instantly. We're going, Samuel said. Behind them, Mara stirred, smoke choking her lungs. She reached for the knife again, dragging herself across the floor. Samuel didn't hesitate. He turned, raised the rifle, and shot. The bullet hit just above her head, splintering wood. A warning. Then he kicked the door open, child in arms, and vanished into the night. Behind them, the shack lit up like judgment. They didn't stop riding until the ranch lights returned. Eli stood on the porch, face bandaged, hope clinging to his features like dew. Cora was already running, arms out, breath catching in sobs. Jonah reached for her before the horse even stopped moving. Cora pulled him down, held him tight, knees buckling in the dirt. Samuel dismounted slowly, every limb aching, coat singed from the fire. He didn't say a word. He just looked at them. They were whole again. Daniel stepped out of the barn, leaning hard on the doorframe. Did she? Samuel met his eyes. She'll live. For now. For now. Later that night, after the wounds were cleaned and the doors barred and the guns laid close, Cora found Samuel outside. He sat on the edge of the porch, watching the stars emerge one by one. You lied to me, she said. He didn't turn. I did. You kept the truth from me. About the journal. About Mara. About Jonah. Yes. She sat beside him, knees drawn up, gaze far away. I should hate you. I'd understand if you did. But I don't. Samuel turned now. Cora didn't look at him, just said, because you came back with my son. Samuel's voice was low. "I'll always come back." And for the first time, she believed him. For 2 days after the fire, the land held its breath. The wind refused to blow, and even the birds stayed quiet, as if waiting for something to finish breaking. Smoke still curled from Samuel's coat, no matter how long it hung on the line. Jonah wouldn't sleep alone, not even with a lamp lit. And Eli, once so eager to prove his strength, had gone quiet in a different way, watchful, restless, always standing between the doors and his mother. Cora tried to pretend things were normal. She swept ash from the porch and reboiled linens that didn't need washing. She baked too much bread and folded the same blanket twice. When Samuel told her to rest, she only looked at him like he didn't understand what it meant to have rested too long before. "You can't outwork grief," he told her on the third morning. She didn't answer. Daniel, stitched and still sore, took to sleeping in the barn. He never asked to come in. He never asked to leave. It was like guilt had made a bed out there and chained him to it. Sometimes Cora would bring him soup and bread and leave it by the door without knocking. Sometimes she thought about saying something more. She never did. The thing about peace is, it doesn't announce itself. It just happens. You notice one morning that your son is humming again as he pours feed into the chicken trough. You catch your eldest carving another of those awful little horses and realize you haven't heard him scream in 2 nights. You wake up and your first breath doesn't feel like glass. But peace wasn't what worried Cora most. It was Jonah. He hadn't asked a single question since Samuel brought him back from the shack. Until now, they were out in the garden, what was left of it, turning over soil in the shallow morning light. Jonah held a spade too big for his hands, but dug with the kind of intensity only a child with thoughts too large could manage. "Ma," he said quietly. Cora straightened. "Yes, love." He didn't look at her. "That woman, Mara, she said she carried me." Cora froze. She lied, right? She knelt beside him slowly. "Why would you ask that?" "Because I look nothing like you. Or Eli. And when that man in town saw me, he called me Briggs." Cora didn't breathe for a moment. Jonah looked at her now, his eyes huge and brown and scared. "Am I not really yours?" The world spun sideways for just a moment. Cora felt the weight of every choice she'd ever made press in her ribs. "You're mine," she said, "in every way that matters." "But am I?" "You're mine," she repeated, firmer now. "You came to me scared and small, and I chose you. I chose to love you every day after. I bled for you. I fought for you. I would die for you. That makes you mine." Jonah nodded, though it took him a moment. "But you didn't make me." "No," she whispered, "but I remade you." That seemed to land. He went back to digging. That night, Samuel stood out by the old corral, fixing a slat that had come loose in the storm. Cora came to him without a word. He handed her a nail without asking. "We need to talk about what comes next," she said. "Next?" Samuel echoed. "Mara's still alive. That shack didn't bury her. She won't come back. Not with the ledger gone. Not with Jonah beyond her reach. She's not the kind that lets go." Samuel nodded slowly. "Then we be ready." Cora hesitated. "There's more." Samuel set the hammer down, turned to face her fully. "I want to stay." He blinked. "You are staying?" "No, I mean really stay. Stop looking over our shoulders. Stop pretending this is temporary. I want to build something here, with you. With the boys." Samuel's voice was rough when he said, "Are you sure?" "I've never been surer of anything." He stepped forward, brushed a hand against her jaw. "I've been waiting to hear that since the first time you burned my coffee." She laughed, actually laughed, and it sounded like spring after a hard thaw. They didn't kiss. Not yet. There was still too much fire between them to be gentle. But her hand found his, and they stood like that until the moon climbed high. The next morning, Daniel was gone. Left a note in the barn scrawled across a feed bag. "Can't keep asking for forgiveness, I'm too slow to earn. Going north, where no one knows what I've done. Tell the boys to be better than me." He left behind his coat and a carving knife. Eli found the note. Read it once. Folded it. Put it in his pocket. He didn't cry. Instead, he walked inside, set the carving knife on the mantel, and said, "I think I want to learn how to fix things." Cora turned from the stove. "You already do." Jonah stood at the door, muddy boots and all, holding out a wooden horse, unfinished but honest. "This is for you," he told Samuel. Samuel crouched, took the piece. "Why me?" "Because you brought me home." Cora stood in the doorway, watching them. A man who never thought he'd be part of a family, and two boys who had every reason to fear the world. She stepped outside, let the sun hit her skin, and knew it wasn't the end. Because the land still carried scars. Because there were still splinters in the boards and stories that hadn't finished unraveling. But the door was open, and for the first time, they weren't waiting for someone to knock. They were ready to open it themselves. The first green shoots pushed up through the thawed soil. The same morning Cora found the letter on the porch. No courier had delivered it. No boot prints in the mud. Just a single parchment sealed in wax, laid carefully between the rocking chair and the threshold like a gift. Or a warning. She opened it with hands that hadn't trembled in weeks. The handwriting was familiar. Too familiar. "Cora, you may think yourself free. You are not. You may think the past is buried. It is not. I gave you time for Jonah. You stole him anyway. I never stop hunting what's mine. I'm coming for what you owe. M." The wax crumbled in her fist. She didn't scream. She didn't weep. She walked inside, folded the letter, and slid it into the stove's firebox, watching it catch and blacken without a sound. Samuel came in a moment later, mud still on his boots, sleeves rolled up from mending the corral fence. "You okay?" he asked, catching the scent of burnt paper. She looked at him, then nodded, but she wasn't. Not really. Later, once the boys were asleep and the house quiet, she told him everything. Every word in that letter. Every unspoken fear it pulled back to the surface. He listened without interruption. Only when she finished did he speak. "We knew it wasn't over." "I know. You still want to stay? I want to fight for it." He nodded. "Then we'll fight." The next morning the preparations began, not of fear, but of resolve. Samuel taught Eli how to shoot properly. Not with bravado, not for power, but with the steady control of someone who never pulled a trigger unless they had to. Cora reinforced every window. She moved the boys' sleeping pallets closer to the cellar door. She wired the front gate with a bell. Jonah painted a sign himself. "This land is guarded." It was crooked, misspelled, beautiful. They waited. Days passed, then weeks. Spring began to root itself deep into the land. But Mara did not come. Not yet. Instead came others. A rider one day, a widow and her young girl seeking a place to trade eggs for grain. Samuel let them. Then a man who'd lost his own ranch to fire, desperate for honest work. Cora hired him to mend the fence lines. Then another, a boy, not much older than Eli, with a burn scar across his chin and a story no one pressed him to tell. Soon there were 6 extra mouths at the table, and not one Cora regretted feeding. "I didn't mean to start a town," she said one night, watching Jonah and the girl from down the trail chase chickens in the fading light. Samuel chuckled. "You didn't. Feels like it. You started a place that don't turn people away. That's not a town. That's a family." She looked at him. Even knowing Mara might burn it all down, his voice was soft, especially because she might. It was the kind of peace that made people believe in second chances. But peace is never forever. 3 months after the letter, they heard the first gunshot. It came from the east field, where the fence met the edge of the ridge trail. A warning shot, then another. By the time Samuel and Eli reached the rise, there were 3 riders waiting just out of range. They didn't speak, didn't ride closer. They only tipped their hats and turned back toward the tree line. A message. Samuel and Cora stood at the edge of the porch that night, silent. "She's circling," Cora said, "looking for weakness. She won't find it." "No," Samuel agreed. "But she'll keep looking." It was no longer a matter of if. It was when. Jonah felt it too. He didn't ask for bedtime stories anymore. He took to carrying Eli's old knife in his boot. He asked Samuel how to track prints in the dirt. Asked Cora how to pack a saddlebag in under 2 minutes. One evening, he came to them both and said, "I want to be ready." And they let him. Even children can carry armor if it's made of love. When the attack came, it wasn't fire or fury. It was subtle. A poisoned water barrel, a sabotaged gate, a box of flour that turned out to be ash. It happened over 4 nights. Silent wounds meant to bleed them slowly. Samuel set traps. Eli took longer patrols. Jonah stood watch at the loft window with a slingshot and 3 river stones. Cora didn't sleep. And then it ended. One morning, they woke to find a saddlebag hanging from the gate. Inside, Mara's hat. Bullet hole through the brim. Dried blood on the band. And a note. Tell the boy I'm done chasing ghosts. You won, but not because you fought harder. Because you never gave him back. That was it. No name. No return. Cora read it twice. Samuel didn't speak. Jonah, when told, only said, "Good," and walked outside to feed the hens. They didn't talk about it again. Instead, they built more rooms. Cora taught the girl from the ridge how to read. Samuel taught the burned man how to work horses without fear. Eli began carving again. Not horses, but people, faces, family. And Jonah started a journal of his own. He kept it tucked beneath his mattress, pages filled with stories that weren't quite true, but weren't quite lies either. Stories of brave ranchers and kind outlaws, of housekeepers who never flinched and boys who learned how to fight with more than their fists. He showed the first pages to Cora one night. "I'm calling it the Hale Ranch." Cora smiled. "That's a good name." Jonah paused. "Is that our name now?" Cora looked at Samuel, who had just stepped in from the porch, his shirt dusted in hay and sunset. "Yes," she said, "I think it is." And so the ranch lived on, not because the land was fertile or because the bullets stopped flying, but because a man who didn't think he'd ever love again opened a door, because a widow with nothing left built a home from ash, because 2 boys grew into something stronger than fear, and because sometimes, just sometimes, family is made not by blood, but by the people who stay when it would have been easier to leave. It was nearly 15 years before Jonah saw the ranch again. He came up the old ridge trail on horseback, hat pulled low against the sun, a satchel tied behind his saddle, and a book in his coat pocket. The trees had grown thicker, the creek shallower, but the path, still narrow and rutted with the memory of wagon wheels, welcomed him back without a word. The gate was new. Sturdy iron posts, the name Hale carved into it above the arch. The bell still hung there. Same rope, same rust. He rang it once. The sound echoed across the yard like a ghost clearing its throat. A woman stepped out onto the porch, flour on her hands, an apron tied at her waist. Hair streaked with gray, but eyes still bright as wildfire. Cora didn't smile at first. She just looked at him. "Jonah," she asked, voice thinner than he remembered, but no less steady. He dismounted slowly, boots hitting dirt that once tripped him as a boy. "It's me." Her hands flew to her mouth, and for a heartbeat she didn't move. Then she did. The hug crushed the air from his lungs. "You got taller," she whispered into his collar. "You got smaller," he teased back. She laughed. Same sharp sound, same catch at the end. Inside, the house was both familiar and foreign. The hearth was larger, the table longer. A crib stood in one corner. Paintings lined the wall. One of a horse, another of a woman with a braid that looked suspiciously like Lila from the old ridge trail. Cora caught him glancing. "That's Eli's wife," she said. "And that's their daughter. You just missed them. They live over the hill now. Got a cabin of their own. You staying long?" Jonah shrugged. "As long as you'll have me." He pulled the book from his coat. Hardcover, gold lettering. The Hale Ranch, Stories from a Fireline Childhood. By Jonah Hale. Cora traced the letters like scripture. "I didn't think you'd use the name," she murmured. "I didn't think I'd earn it," he replied. They sat by the fire that night. Just the 2 of them. Samuel was gone now, 5 winters back. Quiet without pain. His grave sat beneath the tall pine near the barn, marked with a stone and a single carving. A good man. A hard man. Ours. Jonah visited it before sundown. Didn't speak. Just sat. Cora watched him now, older than he should be for his years, lines around his eyes too deep for a man barely 30. But the fire was still in him. So was the quiet strength. "I've been thinking," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "There's this boy I found, 12, maybe 13. Pickpocket in Dawson. Smart. Quick. No family. No name he'll admit to. Cora tilted her head. What are you going to do? Jonah looked into the fire. Bring him home. She smiled softly. You think I want to stay? He doesn't know it yet, but he will. Outside, the land stretched wide and open, no longer dangerous, but never tame. And inside, two people sat in a house built from blood and mercy, telling stories not to remember the past, but to make space for a future that kept choosing them. One ghost at a time.